COVID-19 as a good opportunity for the professionals to improve their knowledge in various branches of law and commerce. And therefore, Chamber is almost organizing one webinar every day on various topics which are of interest to the professionals, particularly the Chamber of Tax Consultants, lawyers, etc. However, today we have a topic which per se is not what the professionals who are mainly attached with the chamber practice, but is something which we are affected on our day-to-day lives, particularly when WhatsApp has become a very important, what one can say, a very important instrument, which is sailing us through this COVID-19. However, a lot of issues have arisen, like we particularly see in many groups when somebody is posting or putting a forward and you see the admins requesting to delete the post or asking for the veracity of the post and mentioning that there can be some criminal liabilities. And we also see in the news and also the government had met to discuss that how people who are putting fake post or valid post, we do not know what is fake, what is valid, but we of course want to know what are the criminal consequences in case we have violated some law or some guidelines of the government. Therefore, we decided to have this topic of WhatsApp, and we are having a very promising criminal lawyer with us, Mr. Chinmay, Dr. Chinmay Bhosle, who is going to elucidate on the topic and enlighten us. I'll request our chairman, Paras Savla, of the Commercial and Allied Laws Committee to throw some light on the subject before Abhishek introducing our today's speaker.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, Paras bhai, please go ahead.
Welcome everyone and good evening everyone. The concept of lockdown or the house arrest was different in the 20th century as compared to the current times. Earlier we had one-way communication through television or radio. Our PM has already spoken to all the media guys and he may have raised this issue of fake news or false news. However, what about the social media? So everybody is hooked to mobiles, which also includes WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, etc. In fact, the fake news or false news combined with plagiarism is worse than coronavirus as such. If you may have heard, there were two FIRs registered against the fake news for this Bandra incident. Be as it may be, what if such news is posted in a WhatsApp group where you are a member? What would you do? Would you read it, research on it and delete it, or say would you read it, research it, and object in the group to stop spreading such messages? Or would you read it, do not do any research and just forward it? I'm not in fact, there is one weird concept of WhatsApp. So whenever an admin has made a group and thereafter later on, if he has left, WhatsApp automatically makes other guys an admin. Have you ever checked as to whether you are a part of an admin because of such kind of defaults and you are still holding an post? And if you are an admin, are you like a president to control the entire group? Is it your say and you are the key liable person for what are the messages which are going in or out? And can somebody say that no, I was under a bona fide belief that whatever has come was true? And can you raise that constitutional validity vis-a-vis the right of freedom of speech? We have so many doubts, and I would like to thank CTC, Rahul and team, and our esteemed speaker to immediately, accept for coming and speaking on this topic. Without taking much of your time, I would request Abhishek Tilak to just give a brief profile, a brief introduction of the speaker, and then to take it over. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paras, for highlighting the importance of the topic today. Good evening, everyone, and I welcome today's seminar. Our speaker for the evening is Dr. Chinmay Bhosle. He is a gold medalist from Pune University and also one of the youngest advocates to have conferred with PhD. He has started his career with senior advocate Ashok Mundargi and then thereafter joined the chambers of Advocate Satish Manishinde in Mumbai. After having experiences in these two chambers, he then returned to his father's chamber, that is Dr. Suresh Chandra Bhosle, who's a former chairman of Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa. He is a criminal lawyer and has been practicing in the field and has been specializing in economic offenses and white collar crimes. He has appeared in celebrated cases such as Adarsh scam, 2G trial, Hassan Ali, to mention a few. He regularly conducts also pro bono trials under the POSCO Act. With this brief introduction, I open the floor to Dr. Chinmay Bhosle to take it forward. We welcome you for today's webinar.
Friends, before Dr. Chinmay starts, friends, you can post your question and answers, and we are also having the option of raising hands. So, of course, it is dependent on the speaker how you would like to take the questions. But usually we take the question and answers first, and then whoever has raised their hands, we allow them to come on the platform and ask the question. With this, I'll request Chinmay to start.
Good evening, everyone. I'll first of all thank the Chamber of Tax Consultants to take this endeavor and arrange this webinar for today and inviting me over to interact with you all. And I'll also thank Abhishek for such a generous introduction. So let's start with the topic. So I wouldn't have imagined while I started out as a lawyer that this would be a topic of discussion, that too for so many of us, and it will become a topic of national importance. So how do we use WhatsApp, and what could be the criminal consequences of using something which is used in such a casual manner in a day-to-day setting or in a day-to-day environment, and how it can actually have an impact, or for that matter, legal consequence, is something which is baffling. But that's all thanks to the current scenario, the current pandemic that we all are facing. And it's an endeavor that we all should come together, discuss what are the legalities, what are the intentions behind the rules and regulations which are controlling these particular modes of communications. And one thing that everyone should ideally essentially understand is that every one of us is in this together. So it is our endeavor, a joint endeavor, to make sure that it remains at a pandemic and we recover from the pandemic, and we do not let it become a panic-demic for that matter. So this happens when communication has become so easy. Everyone has a cell phone, everyone has a laptop, everyone can communicate with each other via various social media. And it is very, very necessary that everyone has the sense and knows what is he doing and what is he trying to communicate with everyone. Essentially, as it was rightly pointed out, or one of the things which was mentioned during the introduction of the topic is, I'm just mentioning that because before getting into the nitty-gritties of the legal sections or provisions which have been enumerated and which I'll be dealing with at large, I would like to tell everyone the intention behind this entire discussion, the intention behind which the acts have to be construed and understood. So essentially, coming back, as it was stated during the introduction of this particular topic, what if someone says that I have done it in good faith? What if someone says I didn't know whether it was true or not? What if someone says that I didn't know it was a criminal offense for that matter? So essentially, let's start out from there. Why is it so important to understand how's the utilization or usage of WhatsApp, or for that matter, any social medium, has to be done? So why is it necessary for us to come together and discuss and understand this? Is that in India, defense cannot be taken that I was ignorant about the law. So ignorance of law is not a valid defense in India, essentially. So every citizen who is part of the land of India has to know whatever are the prevalent provisions which govern the country. So essentially, that's point one, that every citizen, irrespective of whether he is a lawyer or what profession is he into or what not, if he's a citizen of the country, he needs to know the law of the land. So essentially, that is the most basic thing that we need to understand, that why is today's discussion so important. That's point number one. Point number two, which comes down to the importance or the logic of having this current discussion or one-on-one endeavor to have this understood in detail is that on this very topic of usage of WhatsApp, I have seen that, for that matter, quite a few of you must have seen that the cybersecurity cell and the Maharashtra government, as well as other government, as well as the state police, have given out various guidelines for usage of WhatsApp. Now, the moment the WhatsApp usage guidelines were out and they were given, there were very few who actually went into the letter of that particular guideline. No one bothered to read them, and the only thing which was floating around is that the admin of the WhatsApp group will be held liable, one, or it was mentioned that it is now a mandatory thing that every group which is there on the WhatsApp has to be controlled only by the admin. That is, the only admin has to speak. These again are things which people are saying or are being said by people or forwarded by people without actually reading the letter of the law. What are the guidelines is very material, and at the same time it is very material to understand what is the law by which the guidelines were made. So since we are on that topic, I'll start enumerating one by one what all are the provisions which essentially are needed to be understood in the entire setting. So today we are here because the country and the world at large is facing a pandemic, and that's why in India essentially an order under section 144 of the CRPC has been promulgated and it is being implemented. So let's start from there. So I'll quickly brief you all on all the acts that we are going to briefly discuss today. First would be the Criminal Procedure Code. Second will be the Indian Penal Code. Third will be the Epidemic Diseases Act. Fourth will be the Disaster Management Act. And fifth will be the Information Technology Act. So let's, I'll just, for the convenience of everyone, let me just share my screen. Yes, is this visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Chinmay, if you can do a slideshow, that will be better.
Yes, it is.
No,
On the top.
just click on the slideshow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and start from play from start at the perfect.
Yes. So coming to the relevant part of it. So as I mentioned, we'll be broadly discussing these five acts. That's the CRPC, IPC, the Information Technology Act, Epidemic Diseases Act, and the Disaster Management Act. So what are the sections which are relevant in the present situation? That is either the pandemic or the usage of WhatsApp. That's section 144 of the CRPC, 144 of IPC, 153A, 153B, 188, and 295A of IPC. 66 A, C, and D of IT Act, 188 again of IPC at EDA, because section 3 of EDA is material over here, but I'll get into it when I come to it. And section 54 of Disaster Management Act. So let's go on to section 144. So as I mentioned, since today we are facing a pandemic and it is the need of the hour to protect and stop the curb of the current pandemic, section 144 of CRPC has been promulgated. So what is section 144 of CRPC? Section 144 of CRPC essentially allows the district magistrate or any other executive magistrate who has been specially empowered by the state government to pass any order to prevent so he can prevent certain things. What are those certain things? One is public tranquility, another is public health. These are the two most important broad headings under which a promulgation of section 144 order can happen. So what does section 144 essentially mean? So let me just read the bare text of it. In cases where, in the opinion of the district magistrate or the subdivisional magistrate or any other executive magistrate specially empowered by the state government in this behalf, there is sufficient ground for proceeding under this section and immediate prevention or speedy remedy is desirable, such magistrate may, by a written order stating the material facts of the case and served in the manner provided in 134, direct any person to abstain from a certain act or to take certain order with respect to certain property in his possession or under his management, if such magistrate considers that such direction is likely to prevent or tends to prevent obstruction, annoyance, or injury to any person lawfully employed or danger to human life, health, or safety, or disturbance of the public tranquility or a riot of an affray. So why am I reading this? I want to take reference of this again while I'll speak on section 144 of the Indian Penal Code. So let me again read a specific part of it. It says, such magistrate by a written order stating the material facts of the case and served in the manner provided in section 134, direct any person to abstain from a certain act. So what is material here is abstain any person. There have been, I've seen quite a few, I've seen quite a few posts at places wherein it states that if it's okay that 5 people are around and we are chit-chatting and there's no law to stop us. So I'll get back to that while we speak of 144 of IPC as well. But do remember what I am pointing out right now at 144 of CRPC. Let's move ahead with the bare text again. An order under this section may, in cases of emergency or in cases where the circumstances do not admit of the serving in due time of a notice upon the person against whom the order is directed, be passed ex parte. An order under this section may be directed to a particular individual or to persons residing in a particular place or area, or to the public generally when frequenting or visiting a particular place or area. So this is the basic sum and substance. So what do we understand here? So 44.1 says that the district magistrate or any other person empowered by the state government has the power to stop any person. It says any person. It doesn't give any requirement of number of people. It says it can stop any person from doing any acts which will be necessary to protect the health and safety or the public tranquility of that particular area. That's one. Second, what does it say is that it can be an ex parte order. So it need not be an order wherein people have to be called upon, their hearings be taken, and only then the order can be passed. And third, what does it state is that the order can be directed towards a particular individual, that is one individual, or it can be to persons at large of any area. So under whatever jurisdiction comes within the power of that person making the order, he can make this order for that entire jurisdiction, which is under his jurisdiction. So that is the basic point which everyone needs to understand over here. So the other sections essentially provide the provision, the procedure by which the provision is usually implemented. So what you need to understand over CRPC is in force in India right now. Maharashtra started it a bit earlier than the national lockdown, but however, this is the section under which the order has been passed by the concerned executive magistrates of the concerned states, or for that matter, the nation. Now, why are we facing people stating that it's okay if people up to 5 people can come together and that won't be a penalty under the current situation? So that is a basic confusion that people are having with section 144 of the Indian Penal Code. So let's go on to see what does section 144 of the Indian Penal Code say. It states, whoever being armed with any deadly weapon or with anything which used as a weapon of offense is likely to cause death, is a member of an unlawful assembly, shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 2 years or with fine. So why 144 of IPC and 144 of CRPC are getting confused is that unlawful assembly by definition states that 5 or more people can be declared to be part of an unlawful assembly. So essentially, if there are 4 people or lesser number of people together, by law, you cannot book them under section 144 of IPC. Mind well, IPC. So people up to 4 or below cannot be booked as a part of unlawful assembly as per the Indian Penal Code, but it does not mean that the current order under section 144 of the CRPC can be or shall be disregarded by people who are up to the number of 4. If you I'm sure everyone must be well aware that different orders have been passed by the concerned local magistrates, wherever executive magistrates, depending upon the severity of the particular pandemic. And we have to essentially understand the intent, and we need to respect the intent behind which the orders are made. So you must have read in the newspapers or have seen at various social medias that even people who are going out for morning walks have been booked by the police. And essentially it is so because in that particular area, the orders under section 144 of CRPC were such that even one person was not allowed to venture out in public premise. That included a morning walk as well. The only restriction which was curbed, the restriction which was curbed for venturing out was for buying essentials. That's about it. So for that matter, I'm speaking right now from Pune, and in Pune itself, notices are served upon most of the individual units or societies that any person who steps out, and there's a list of things which are barred to be done, and that includes going out for a morning walk, going out for casual purposes or whatever it might be, other than buying of essentials or venturing out with a permission from the concerned local police. So that essentially should be sufficient to speak and to tell you all that 144 of CRPC does not require that minimum 5 people should be around to promulgate that order. 144 of CRPC is discretionary in nature, and essentially it is the discretion to protect public safety and public health, and whatever deems fit by the concerned government and officials of that area, they can pass the respective orders in their areas to either protect the public safety and public health of that area. So since we have sufficiently spoken about what is 144 of CRPC and what is 144 of the IPC, I'll move on to other sections which you might require to understand with the usage of WhatsApp in the current time and place. So 153A of the Indian Penal Code is next, which is very important and essential to be understood. So what does it state? Promoting enmity between different groups on grounds of religion, race, place of birth, residence, language, etc., and doing acts prejudicial to maintenance of harmony. So why is it material? Because it's pretty self-explanatory that this was essentially put down in various guidelines which have been mentioned by the state police or the National Cyber Security Cell because of an event which was conducted in our capital, and there were various things which were being circulated on social media. So essentially it is everyone should make it a point that no messages should be forwarded. Mind well, the Information Technology Act also makes forwarding of a message as an offense. It's not that only the creator is going to be responsible, but any person who is also going to forward such messages can be held responsible if he knows that he is promoting enmity between different groups on grounds of religion, race, place of birth, residence, language, etc. So a quick glance at the section. Whoever by words either spoken or written, or by signs or by visible presentations or otherwise promotes or attempts to promote and on grounds of religion, race, place of birth, residence, language, caste or community, or any other ground whatsoever, disharmony or feelings of enmity, hatred or ill will between different religious, racial, language or regional groups. Just one second. So essentially, it encompasses various things. One could be spreading any disharmony on the caste, on the grounds of religion. One could be race, one could be place of birth, because there could be people who are stating that there is particular area of the city or the state which is responsible for spreading the current pandemic. So even things which are hinting towards these events or factually incorrect parts could be held to be a point of concern by the authorities, and you could be booked under them. So you need to understand and keep calm while actually reading such things, and not be in a state of panic constantly and keep on spreading or forwarding such messages that you see. Because essentially, as also it was pointed out during the introduction of the present topic, that how are we going to understand whether the particular facts which are mentioned in that message or that video are true or not. But as long as you're having that doubt whether they are true or not, it's best to just not press the forward button and keep it to yourself and make sure you don't spread panic. That's section 153A. Let's move on to section 153B. Imputations, assertions prejudicial to national integration. Again, it is essentially something which is made to prevent racial and religious statements or undertones, and it's illegal to basically try and make any imputations on any class of persons or members of any religious, racial, language or regional group which bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of India as by law established or uphold the sovereignty and integrity of India. That whoever, by words either spoken or written, or by signs or by visible representations or otherwise, asserts, counsels, advises, propagates or publishes that any class of persons shall, by reason of their being members of any religious, racial, language or regional group or caste or community, be denied or deprived of their rights as citizens of India. So essentially understand that why 153 now. So here, every person who is a part of the Republic of India has full right of being represented as a member of that particular religious, racial or linguistic group. So if anyone is trying to promulgate any enmity or any sort of bias towards that communal or linguistic group, it can be considered as a act which can be punished under section 153B. So publishing of any assertion by any person against any of these classes of people, as I mentioned, religious, racial, linguistic or regional, can be considered as a cause of disharmony or feelings of enmity or hatred or ill will between such members and other persons, shall be punished with imprisonment which may extend up to 3 years. So anything which is going to cause enmity between that group itself or the group and the people who are outside that group can be considered as a criminal offense, which happens in most of the messages that we see these days. Hardly people might be reporting. I was recently reading yesterday a report that major cities like Pune and Bombay and Nagpur, for that matter, are getting at least 24 complaints per day from every city with respect to wrong messages being forwarded by people on the WhatsApp. So that comparatively, it's a very small number of complaints being registered, but because looking at the manner in which we are inundated by various messages, it's comparatively extremely small number, but you need to consider that any forward or message which is factually incorrect or which is trying to or which might disrupt the harmony in our country is going to be a point of assertion for the authorities to press you with charges under the various acts that we are discussing right now. So that's 153B. Now let's move on to 188 of the Indian Penal Code. So before going on to 188, let me take the liberty to just explain 295 first. So section 295A of the Indian Penal Code: deliberate and malicious acts intended to outrage religious feelings of any class by insulting its religion or religious beliefs. So I think it's self-explanatory. It's very much something which is usually charged along with the previous sections that I've mentioned, 153A and B. So anything which is done intentionally to disrupt the harmony of any religious group and the country at large can be booked under that section. So now let's come on to the important part of the IPC. Just as how important section 144 of the CRPC and 144 of the IPC are, so is section 188. So what does 188 say? Section 188 of the Indian Penal Code essentially is a punishment for disobeying any rule or any order which has been passed by a public servant. That's the sum and substance of the section. Let's go on to the bare text of that section. Whoever, knowing that by any order promulgated by a public servant lawfully empowered to promulgate such order. He is directed to abstain from a certain act or to take certain order with certain property in his possession or under his management, disobeys such direction shall, if such disobedience causes or tends to cause obstruction, annoyance, or injury, or risk of obstruction, annoyance, or injury to any person lawfully employed, be punished with simple imprisonment for a term which may extend to 1 month, or with fine which may extend to 200 rupees, or with both. And if such disobedience causes or tends to cause danger to human life, health, or safety, or causes or tends to cause a riot or affray, shall be punished with imprisonment of either description of a term which may extend to 6 months, or with fine which may extend to 1,000 rupees, or with both. So let's understand why 144 CRPC, 144 IPC, and 188 IPC were made, so that you'll understand the logic behind it. The time at which these were made were not really pro-India as such, but fortunately in times like these that we are facing today, they do come in handy. The Indian Penal Code, as you rightly know, every one of you, it was promulgated way back. The drafting started in 1833 by the British government. 1853 they were done with it. 1860 the Indian Penal Code was brought into force. The very logic of having these sections way back then was to make sure that people don't gather for the freedom movement. They do not cause any disruption of public safety, and they do not it was to make sure that the harmony was intact of the concerned area. But fortunately, it also makes life easier to implement orders by the public servants, and that's why India has continued it even after independence. Is that section 188 essentially, when anything has been promulgated by a public servant, any order, it can be limited to a person or it can be limited to the entire country. Section 188 can be brought into force, and anyone who does any disobedience towards that particular order can be booked under this. So this is the section which is very material. Why? Because we'll be also speaking about the Epidemic Diseases Act, which blanketly just states that any order which has been passed under the Epidemic Diseases Act, if it is not followed, will be punished by section 188 of the Indian Penal Code. So that's why 188 is necessary, because even if you disobey 144 of CRPC, you will be booked under 188 of IPC. If you disobey the Epidemic Diseases Act, you will again be booked under 188. Or if you disobey any order under the Disaster Management Act in the present scenario, you will be booked under 188. So everyone needs to understand section 188 of the Indian Penal Code. So just if anyone wants to quickly go through the explanation of the act itself, it says it is not necessary that an offender should intend to produce harm or contemplate his disobedience as likely to produce harm. It is sufficient that he knows of the order which he disobeys and that his disobedience produces or is likely to produce harm. So as I mentioned, not having knowledge of law or the provisions is not material in India, and essentially here it's not that whether the particular person has actually committed any harm to other people of the community. It's about disobeying that order. The mere fact that you have disobeyed the order is sufficient to be charged under section 188 of the Indian Penal Code. So now let's move on to the Information Technology Act. Now we have understood in what situation we are legally in India thanks to the current pandemic. You have also understood the Indian Penal Code, that what all laws are material in the current situation or scenario under the Indian Penal Code. Now let's understand the Information Technology Act, because grossly the usage of WhatsApp would fall under the IT Act. So the material sections here are section 66A, section 66A, C and D. Let's start with section 66A. Punishment for sending offensive messages through communication service, etc. Any person who sends by means of a computer resource or a communication device any information that is grossly offensive or has menacing character, or any information which he knows to be false or any information which he knows to be false, but for the purpose of causing annoyance, inconvenience, danger, obstruction, insult, injury, criminal intimidation, enmity, hatred, or ill will, persistently by making use of such computer resource or a communication device or any electronic mail or electronic mail message for the purpose of causing annoyance or inconvenience, or to deceive or to mislead the addressee or recipient about the origin of such messages, shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years. So why is this material? So what happens is that even section 66C, let's quickly read what is 66C and I'll explain both of them to you. Punishment for identity theft. Whoever fraudulently or dishonestly makes use of the electronic signature, password, or any other unique identification feature of any other person shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 3 years, or shall also be liable with fine which may extend to 1 lakh rupees. So what happens is that in such a in the current scenario, why is this material? Is that many a times people send in forwards which state that so and so is the order passed by the, say, concerned police commissioner, the concerned chief secretary of the state, and most of the times the person who's made that false communication has made sure that he tries to show it as a true order. So what do is that they try to paste the name of that concerned officer on it, or they try to show that it has been signed by that officer. So making this particular message wherein say it says that the commissioner of ABCD city has made going out punishable as a punishable offense, going out of your house as a punishable offense. So if that is a fake message made by just writing the name of the officer, and it's made by showing a false signature of his, and it is forwarded by people around, that itself can be covered under 66A and C, because you are essentially trying to you are doing identity theft in the first instance, and also you're giving such grossly offensive, such messages are essentially taken as offensive. Why? Because the society at large goes into an instant state of panic when you send such messages, and it becomes an absolute state of issue of law and order. Therefore, it is considered by the executive that such messages or such acts be considered as grossly affecting the public harmony. And also identity theft obviously is a gross crime which should be punished and is punished under section 66C, because so right now as well, when our honorable prime minister had declared that after 20th they'll see the situation of various cities and states, and then the call will be taken by the concerned officials about so it was stated that after 20th of April the call will be taken whether the industries in the concerned areas wherever there is lesser threat will be opened, so on and so forth, and the concerned guidelines will be out shortly. So there were messages which were circulating which said and stated that this is the guideline, that is the guideline, these will be the rules, that will be the rules, and in few of them there were also names of people who had apparently made or sent that particular guideline. So such forwards essentially are such which grossly fall under section 66A and C, because they are not the true sources of information, and they are just spreading false information as well as panic amongst people. In normal scenarios, you will say that what is so misleading what is so grossly offensive for that matter, or menacing with respect to just mentioning a certain state of certain list of say industries. Let's speak about relevant things. So what is so offensive about just mentioning a certain list of industries which can say operate after 20th? So why is it so offensive? Because right now we are in a state of panic because everyone is home. Everyone wants to get rid of this particular pandemic. Everyone wants to be safe. Everyone wants to keep each other safe. But in such a state of scenario, when you say that only ABCD will be allowed and XYZ for that matter won't be allowed, and that's not a true source, or it's not the original source of the government, you are essentially sending out other people in panic. When you say ABC will be allowed to work, you are sending XYZ into panic. because they'll think what's their future going to be. And in the essence, neither ABC nor XYZ, neither of them are in that list or out of that list, because there's no list. You have just randomly made a false list and you have circulated that messages around in various groups or with various people. So that itself is something which is absolutely grossly considered illegal under the Information Technology Act. And in the current scenario, everyone who's reading such messages, who's till now forwarding those messages, I would hope that you understand the veracity. Wherever essential, you should understand the intention of all these provisions, and you should apply your own mind that at times, if you yourself are confused, that is it genuine, is it true, will it be an offense if I forward it? In any case of doubt, the best recourse is to refrain from forwarding it. You have received it, fine. If you grossly feel that it's a wrong message, you can go ahead and file a complaint. The police system is well equipped to handle such complaints. Or if not, the best that you can do is not forward any of the messages that you get or videos that you get which you don't believe to or you're not sure are true. Let's go to section 66D, punishment for cheating by personation by using computer resource. It's similar to 66C, so I won't repeat it. Let's skip now to the Epidemic Diseases Act. So let's understand what is the Epidemic Diseases Act. Essentially, it's a very small act with less than 10 sections. It was made way back in 1897, as it states in its cause title. So why was it made? So it was made to restrict the epidemics which India quite frequently faced more than 100 years ago. And it gave absolute powers to the central and the state governments. So provincial governments back then and the central rule that we had over the country, and now the state as well as the central governments, to make whatever discretionary power, to use the discretionary powers under the act to make whatever rules and orders that they deem fit to curb the epidemic which is being faced by that concerned geographical jurisdiction. So if the epidemic is limited to a certain state for that matter, the state has the power to pass any orders, discretionary powers they have to pass any orders to curb that particular epidemic. If it's a national epidemic, the center will come ahead and still use this act itself and use their discretion and pass whatever orders they feel are necessary to control the epidemic. So usually, as we see, right from the Constitution of India to various acts that we have, for that matter, even IPC has a parallel act that is Code of Criminal Procedure, which shows the procedure by which the IPC has to be implemented. But however, Epidemic Diseases Act is such an act which gives absolute discretion to the state and the center to just make sure that the epidemic doesn't go ahead, and there's no specific procedure that has been laid down at length. However, what does it state essentially is that under section 3 of this particular act, it states that whatever, and that is what you need to understand when you are using WhatsApp or any social media, is that section 3 says that any order which is passed under this act is not followed by any person, it will be an offense under section 188 of the IPC. We all just went to 188 some time back. What does 188 say is that any order of any public officer, if it's not followed by the person, he can be booked under section 188 of IPC, and he can get punishment up to 6 months imprisonment or fine or both. So this is what Epidemic Diseases Act states, that any order which is passed can be booked under the IPC. And that's how essentially before the national lockdown, the state of Maharashtra as well went into a state of lockdown, because the Epidemic Act does give you the power to the state, that is, to make any discretionary order that they deem fit to make sure that the epidemic does not spread. Now let's come on to the next. This is the last of the acts that is material in the present situation. So Disaster Management Act was made on the lines of the Epidemic Diseases Act by the Indian government in 2005. So what was different under the Disaster Management Act was that it obviously did mention how to go ahead and curb a particular epidemic or a natural disaster that the area might be facing. But along with it, it also went ahead and made certain authorities or bodies before which the management of that particular disaster be taken to. So they have made various bodies, like we have the Supreme Court, the High Court, and subordinate courts. They have made various bodies with their hierarchies to make sure that they are in place for the country to be well equipped to manage any disaster that it might be facing. So which is the material section in this act for the current situation, and the topic that we are discussing is section 54. It says punishment for false warning. Whoever makes or circulates a false alarm or warning as to disaster or its severity or magnitude leading to panic shall on conviction be punishable with imprisonment, which may extend to 1 year or with fine. So it also speaks about a circulating false alarm. So as well as the severity of the magnitude. So more than for false alarm, as we all rightly know that we are facing a global pandemic right now. We are facing the threat of COVID-19. So messaging on those lines is not as material. But however, while we speak about the severity and magnitude of that particular disaster, and when we do not have any medical ground or we are not experts ourselves, while sending such messages about the severity or magnitude, which can create panic, it essentially can be considered as a punishable offense under section 54. So everyone needs to understand that blanketly stating that the current disaster is of such a scale that it is going to have ABCD effect, it's going to have so many casualties, it's going to do this damage to the economy, or it's going to not go away for a certain period of time, and all those things which you are not sure to be true, or you do not have any backing for it to be true, should be made sure that it is not sent. Because if you send anything which is speaking falsely about the severity or magnitude, is something which is punishable under the Disaster Management Act. And we keep on seeing quite a few videos for that matter about various situations across the globe, which states that ABCD countries here, so we won't be in a position to deal with it, or whatever it might be. So all these things, making such casual remarks as well, can be considered to be something which will grossly fall under section 54 of the Disaster Management Act, because it is at its very source or core speaking about the severity or the magnitude of the disaster that we are facing right now. So this was the sum and substance of the entire acts that we are right now facing while using. So right now, since the topic is about usage of WhatsApp and broadly social media as well, but however, irrespective, since till the time we are in this scenario of a lockdown, everyone needs to keep it in mind that CRPC 144 is in play, not 144 of IPC. Everyone needs to remember what all sections we just discussed under the IPC, the IT Act, the EDA, as well as the DMA. So I think this is, I'll just, so this was the sum and substance of the essential sections that are material in the current scenario. Now I think I am good to go with the questions, if any.
So Chinmay, you may see some questions have been raised in the Q&A.
Yes.
Maybe you can directly want to take it from there.
Sure. So I'll go one by one. I'll take all the questions one by one, depending upon, I'll go as per the time at which it was asked. So the first question is, are media houses not responsible for sharing false news? Should they not be accountable as people are blindly forwarding such threads or messages? So everyone who's forwarding any false information or false news will be made accountable. There was a certain case which happened in the state of Maharashtra 2 days ago as well, wherein such an act which was, it's an alleged act. We don't know if it's true or not, but the alleged act was booked under the various sections of IPC as well as the Epidemic Diseases Act. So the next question is,
Chinmay, sorry, once you just answer the question, or just click on answer live, so that question will be taken care of.
Yeah. So the next question is, yes, we all ignorance of law is not a defense, but how can an individual verify if a post is true or not if another member posts in the group? So I agree that we are not medical experts, all of us, and we cannot actually have clinical data about a thing to be true or not, since we are facing a medical disaster right now. But it's best to not forward things which you are not sure about. So today I'm sure about the laws that we are speaking, so we are having a discourse, but if I'm not, it's better not to speak with you all guys. It's because me speaking will again cause some sort of panic or misinformation. So whenever you have a doubt, as I mentioned already, that whether the veracity of the post can be trusted or not, it's best not to share it ahead. I'll go on to the next question. Is section 144 CRPC applicable on WhatsApp posts in any way? So section 144, as I mentioned, is a discretionary power. It depends upon what all has been stated in that particular order. So various district magistrates across the state or the nation have made different orders for their local jurisdictions. So 144 CRPC can be used to write up to usage of internet as well, that every one of you must have rightly seen during one of the states of our country facing the problem of usage of internet. So section 144 of CRPC is an absolute discretionary power. So if the local magistrate has mentioned about usage of particular social media as well in the order, then it has to be strictly followed. The next is, who has to decide their true allegiance? So fortunately, in our country, we have sufficient hierarchies of courts. So if the allegation is that bear true allegiance, the true allegiance has not been shown by the person while sending the concerned messages, and it is contested or you're charged for the same, of course, the courts are the ones who are going to decide it after a fair trial. We cannot, fortunately, we live in a democracy, so there's no immediate relief over there that one would say yes, the other would say no. And there'll be a contest as to who's true and who's not. So we follow the rule of law and the courts are to decide it. The next is, the speaker states that sending any messages via WhatsApp which may be incorrect, the genuineness of which has not been checked by the sender of the message, but it sends it in good faith based on the message or video that he possesses, would he still be liable to be punished? Does section 505 of IPC provide any protection irrespective of the content sent by the sender, sent if the sender pleads bona fide behavior and in good faith? So essentially, as I mentioned earlier, if you yourself haven't checked the genuineness of it and you are sending certain things which are blatantly false, it is bound to happen that you will be at the receiving end of being charged under the section, whether or not. So earlier question also asked, who will decide whether I'm right or wrong? So eventually it's going to be the courts of our country which are going to decide upon the evidence whether you actually sent it in good faith or not. Because right now the question states that if I have sent it in good faith, do I get any benefit of it? But who's to decide that as well, whether you are acting in good faith or you are acting maliciously? So if you are acting on those lines, you will be booked. And once you are booked, then you have the free will and the courts of the land can decide whether you are acting in good faith or maliciously. Next is whether if one is charged under section 188 of IPC would disentitle him under various professions as being charged with a crime involving moral turpitude. So yes, as you have rightly pointed out, that various professions for that matter, and also various employments do ask whether you have been charged with a crime which involves moral turpitude. So essentially, that can be a red flag in your due diligence of convictions. A conviction under section 188, yes, it will be considered there. Next is whether PM cares at UPI can it be identity theft? I didn't get the question. Whether PM cares at the rate UPI, can it be identity theft? I haven't figured that question, so I'll skip it. The next question, 66C, is it applicable on forged images of notifications by government authority, like one which said all hotels closed till October 15th? Yes, it will be applicable in all such cases. How are these acts enforced? So most of these acts, so section 144 of CRPC is enforced under 188 of IPC. Also, the Epidemic Diseases Act is also enforced under section 188 of IPC, and the other acts which I have mentioned, that is the IT Act, the IPC, and the Disaster Management Act. All of them are penal offences, and they are enforced via the police. Possible defenses if person arrested under such crimes. There are too many offenses mentioned right now, so giving defenses to each and every one of them will be time consuming right now, but better follow all of them. I know ignorance of law is not an excuse, but what initiatives have been taken by authorities to spread awareness in the time of TikTok or FB Live? So yes, that's a bone of contention that we can always state whether the authorities have taken enough steps or measures to make sure that awareness of the necessary laws has reached all the people, and whether every citizen is aware of what he is to be doing or not be doing. So that's a point of contention again, but it's better that we all are informed citizens. If the government is not taking enough steps, if you feel so, it's better you try and understand whatever are the laws yourself. Because as I said, if you happen to not follow any of the laws or the sections which we just discussed, you face the risk of being charged with them, and then whether you did it out of ignorance or you did out of malified intent or bona fide intent will be a part of trial. So if you don't want to get into that hassle, it's better to be aware yourself. If the police arrests an accused, is his lawyer allowed to travel to the police station? So in the current time, if the lawyer happens to take the pass and permission to travel, yes, he can. Are the group admins responsible for fake news or the one who forwards? Can you address the point of liability of WhatsApp group admins? So essentially, law is not going to make the group admins responsible for the act of someone else. There was recently a judgment of the Delhi High Court as well on that point, that admin cannot be blanketly made responsible criminally for the acts of the members of the particular group. But essentially, it should also be seen that the intention is very material when it comes to criminal law. Two things here are very material. One is whether vicarious liability is liable in criminal jurisprudence. So the answer is no. And the second is whether the intent of the group admin was such that he intended to support the messages which were being sent, or he was allowing it expressly. So if those things aren't essentially made very transparent or proved, then the group admin cannot be made responsible. But it's best suited, and it is, as it is already mentioned in all the advisories which have been given by the government and the police, if the group consists of members wherein you cannot trust who will send what, it's best suited that the group admin makes the setting of the WhatsApp group such that only the admin can post. Whether sharing memes or any political opinion will attract section 66A? If yes, then whether sharing political opinion on social media amounts to freedom of speech and expression under Article 19. So if yes, then whether sharing political opinion on social media amounts to freedom of speech and expression. I think the person who's asking this means to say that whether it curbs the freedom of speech. So giving out political opinion is one part. It cannot be charged, because essentially that we have freedom of speech and expression in our country. If you are putting out your opinion, but it should not be such that it is devoid of facts and merits, and it shouldn't be such which is let's come to the relevant point. It shouldn't be such that it either creates panic. It is such which states that the orders which have been passed by the government right now under section 144 should not be followed, and so on and so forth. If your opinions are anywhere which go beyond this and which incite people to go against the current situation of law, then yes, you can be booked. If they are otherwise, if they are plain and pure political opinions and you are sharing them, that those shouldn't be coming under the purview of this. If I circulate a message criticizing the lockdown policy of the government on the ground that it causes avoidable hardship to people, does it violate any of the provisions of the law you discussed? No, it doesn't. You have your fair chance to criticize. We are in a democracy. You can state your opinion. As I said, as long as you are grossly not disobeying the orders, one, or you are not ordering others to disobey, you should be good. Just mentioning your opinion is one thing. But if you are going ahead and inciting people to disobey the law, then yes, that is a violation of law. Do you get bail in such acts? If yes, is it at the court or in the police station itself? Yes, you do get bails and they are in the court. If someone forwards a post which is objectionable, will the person receiving the post be liable or penalized under any of the above mentioned penal codes? Also, if the media gets auto-downloaded on WhatsApp, what will be the consequences? No. So essentially the answer is no. If you are just receiving the stuff, you need not be penalized under any of the sections that we discussed. In fact, you will be at the liberty to go ahead and report these acts or messages that you have received, and the police can take necessary action, but you won't be booked for it. When section 66A of IT Act struck down, then why do we still have arrests and in certain rare cases prosecution under it, as it is also a Supreme Court judgment too? So I think there is confusion. So we spoke about other sections as well over here. So the section 66 comprises of quite a few subsections. So when we speak about section 66, it's not material that only one particular section that you have mentioned and which has been struck down by the Supreme Court is dealt with. Other sections still are in force and necessary action can be taken by the authorities. The explanation to section 188 states that it is enough that the offender knows of the order he disobeys. Yes, correct. It does state so. So you cannot really go ahead and dispute whether the act has actually caused any inconvenience to anyone. The mere knowledge that the order was in force and you have disobeyed it is sufficient to be charged under 188. In case we receive any such incorrect WhatsApp content, where can I file a complaint and against whom should I file in case of a forwarded content? In case we receive... So the answer to this is that the local police will be more than happy to help you here to receive a complaint about sending incorrect WhatsApp content. And if at all you have any situation wherein you don't understand whom to approach and whom to give the concerned complaint, it's best to just write to the Commissioner of Police, and every commissioner, specifically in states like Maharashtra, has a one window system wherein you can just give your complaint and they'll take care of it. If in a WhatsApp group there are 50 members and all are group admins, whether all be held liable in case of any breach under the law in the group? So as I already mentioned earlier, blatantly an admin cannot be made responsible for someone else's act, because vicarious liability cannot be attributed in criminal law. However, if it's your intent to allow such messages, then yes, all of you can be booked. But again, it's a matter of contention. So as I mentioned earlier, if there is a situation wherein everyone is at a risk that there are some risky members who might send some risky messages, it's best suited to make 1 or 2 persons admins and restrict the circulation to the admins only. Fraudulently, UPI ID was created in the name of PM Cares. Should it be considered under identity theft? So yes, one of the many sections which will be applicable is that of identity theft. There will be many others, right from cheating to harming the integrity of the country as well. So there will be a long list of sections which can be made applicable, but for the sake of relevance of the current discussion, yes, the identity theft will be one of the sections applicable. The explanation of section 188 states that it is enough that the offender knows of the order he disobeys. So if he is genuinely not aware of the order, does the principle ignorance of law is no defense applicable? Again, even till then, ignorance of law is no defense, because essentially you need to understand when they say that knowledge of section 188 order, knowledge of the order is in place. So what does that mean? So it means that the state has to take due care to promulgate the order which has been passed. So say for right now, section 144 CRPC order has been made that no one is to step out of their houses. So what the state has to take care is that they need to promulgate that order through sufficient mediums. So what does that mean? They'll mention it in the newspapers, they'll mention it through various social medias in the state, in all the states. So right from the country, our Prime Minister is speaking to us. In Maharashtra, the CM is speaking to us. So the state or the center is taking care that it is known to public at large. So that is sufficient from the point of view from the state, that the order which has been made has been promulgated to the public at large. It is not their onus to go ahead and check 130 crore people whether everyone has figured it or not. So once they have promulgated the order, it will be considered that everyone knows of it. And if you are breaking it, then you'll be liable. Few years ago, there was a case where a girl who had liked a post of Facebook was also penalized for the same offense for agreeing to the opinion. So does this still apply? So, see, I wouldn't like to go into the details of it, but eventually the police are at the discretion to go ahead and book anyone wherever they feel that it is a case of booking the person under the relevant act. Whether the booking of that person or the prosecution is correct or not, whether it is devoid of merit or not, is a matter of trial, and it will be decided at trial. In the case of that girl as well, the court had said that it was an aggressive move and it shouldn't have been done. So the question is about, can you be booked? The answer is yes. If the question would have been, will you be held liable by the court? Probably no. Excellent coverage of the topic. I'm not a lawyer, but I could understand the sections covered and legal consequences. Congratulations. Thank you. So I hope I've covered the things essentially which are required here. If there are any more questions, I'm happy to help.
I guess I'll take over now. Being one of the members of the Commercial and Allied Laws Committee, it's been great I've gotten great opportunity to give a vote of thanks. I hope I'm audible, everyone. I'm joining the audio after a very long time. Good evening, sir. We are extremely obliged by the help and support and the information which you have given to us about the WhatsApp legalities which are involved in our day-to-day lives. It is not only useful for advocates, it is useful for everyone. And on behalf of the Commercial and Allied Laws Committee of the Chamber of Tax Consultants, I am extremely thankful to you for giving us such enlightenment and giving us your time